Urusei Yatsura. The science fiction romantic comedy that many people may or may not know is Rumiko Takahashi's big debut work that started in 1978 and is one of the most influential manga series to ever be made, mainly in its characters who would go on to establish many common and iconic anime tropes and relationships that would be used in hundreds of anime and manga, and even influence Western artists like the creator of Scott Pilgrim. Lum is one of the best and earliest examples of a tsundere, and the first anime tsundere character. You pair this with Rumiko's ability to write love triangles, capture Japanese culture and time periods, and you have one of the most influential manga series ever. Before I dive deeper into Urusei Yatsura, I'll speak briefly on the premise. Urusei Yatsura begins with an alien invasion of Earth. With the residents of Earth being completely outmatched, the alien invaders give them a fighting chance in a game of tag. It's up to the randomly selected Otoru Moriboshi to win a game of tag against the alien Princess Lum. To save Earth from being conquered, Otoru will have 10 days to win this game of tag, and the night before the final day, Otoru's girlfriend Shinobu motivates him by telling him she'll marry him if he wins. With new motivation, Otoru gives it his all and is able to win the game of tag. But because he had been talking to himself about marriage, Lum misunderstands him and thought he wanted to marry her and agreed to it, instantly falling in love with him. The beginning of Urusei Yatsura is the most important point in the story, as it introduces the main characters, their relationships, and after the setup of the story, would become very episodic afterwards, similar to a Western cartoon. This means after you've seen the beginning of the series, you can generally see the rest of the series out of order and still have a good understanding of what's going on, because most chapters or episodes are self-contained stories, and once you're familiar with the main cast, you can grasp on to what's going on with just about any episode without the context of what happened before that point in the story. Urusei Yatsura established the foundation of every Rumiko Takahashi series to some extent, whether it be character designs, personality, or role in the story. We see this with characters like Otoru and Godai looking almost identical apart from the age gap, character relationships like Lum and Shampoo, and complex, sometimes one-sided character relationships that are in just about every single Rumiko Takahashi series that are all based off Lum and Otoru's twisted romance. The characters are no doubt the most significant when talking about the influence of Urusei Yatsura. So with that, let's run through the main and extended cast and look into each character's significance with regards to Rumiko Takahashi's future works and their significance to anime and manga as a whole. We can start with Otoru, our protagonist of the story and the main character. It's often presumed that Lum is the main character, and she is very much so the face and mascot of Urusei Yatsura, but this is very common for Rumiko series. The protagonist of Inuyasha is Kagome, but the series is named after Inuyasha, and he is no doubt the more iconic character. Same could be said about Ranma 1/2, but with Urusei Yatsura, Otoru is no doubt the main character. Otoru often gets a lot of criticism, rightly so. He's far from perfect and is in fact a selfish, inconsiderate, perverted asshole. But that's not to say he doesn't have good moments in the manga, and he has a twisted charm to himself. He is a very imperfect and human character who doesn't fail as a protagonist. He's entertaining, his relationship with Lum is never boring, and the two are often at odds with each other, and where his imperfections are not likely to resonate with viewers, his over-the-top character perfectly suits the zany fever dream that is a usual Urusei Yatsura chapter. The thing about all the characters in Urusei Yatsura is that they're all imperfect to varying degrees, and to put it simply, they're all assholes, in one way or another, and the harmony of the cast is superb. Otoru would inspire many of the male tsunderes with multiple love interests who have complex relationships with the female lead, like Inuyasha and Ranma, and just talking about other Rumiko Takahashi series. But he's definitely a character that was the first of its kind, and no doubt I see more and more characters aim to be what Otoru is, a charming asshole. I should also mention most of the main cast are high schoolers who attend Tomobiki High School, and it's a common setting for many episodes. Moving on to the star of the show, Lum is definitely the strongest element of Urusei Yatsura. Her iconic image has withstood the test of time, and she is easily recognizable. Lum, like Otoru, is imperfect. She forces Otoru to be her partner despite him being very clear he's not interested, and she constantly abuses him with comedic electric shocks. This happens both when Lum is angry, but also sometimes when she's happy. Despite the abuse, Lum's charm is unmatched by her innocent perception of love. Her dedication to Otoru is adorable, and Lum is constantly going out of her way to be a good wife to Otoru, further their relationship, and be romantic with him. He is her top priority, and she just wants to have a happy life with him. It's a sweet dream that makes Lum such an endearing character, albeit delusional and often obsessive. Lum puts up with Otoru a lot, which might frustrate some readers, but the moments in which Otoru and Lum are on the same page and not at odds more than makes up for all the bad parts and toxicity in their cartoonish relationship. Lum would no doubt inspire other Rumiko Takahashi characters, like Shampoo from Ranma 1/2 and Yagami from Mason Ikoku, in their perception of the main character of each respective series, but also in their method of aggressive outgoing courting of Zed character, often treating love as though it's a battle, and if you fight for love enough, you'll conquer all hurdles and land the man of your dreams. Of course, Lum being one of the earliest examples of a tsundere and a magical girl waifu also make her impact clear on how her character and relationship would inspire the writing of many romance and harem anime. This idea of an over-the-top fictional fantasy girl falling in love with the protagonist for next to no reason is very commonplace, and I believe Urusei Yatsura was the first to do it. But in a Rumiko Takahashi series, where there is love, there is a love triangle, and that brings us to Ataru's childhood friend Shinobu. Shinobu is one of the many love interests for Ataru, and she is an important part of the cast, usually being present in most chapters. She possesses inhuman strength, which contrasts her frail schoolgirl appearance for some pretty simple humor every now and then. While she might be seen as a love rival to Lum at the beginning of the series, she moves on from Ataru pretty quickly and definitely does not fill the role of a love rival after the beginning of the story. Shinobu is an ever constant in the story and has a fairly close relationship to every eccentric character in Ataru's class, making her a common character in most chapters. The main love interest for Shinobu is the elitist transfer student Mendo. He transfers to Tomobiki High School early on in the series and is a major character in the story. He's presented as handsome, athletic, rich, and talented, and is very popular with the girls in Ataru's class. But Mendo actually shares many of the bad traits Ataru has, like being obsessed with women, having the desire to be a playboy. And Mendo is somewhat of a love rival to Ataru, as he has a desire to be with Lum, but these feelings are extremely one-sided, and he plays more of a pseudo-love rival role similar to Shinobu. Mendo is an extremely eccentric character, like most of the characters in Urusei Yatsura. Other notable things about him include his tendency to treat women amazingly and men like trash, his quirkiness of putting on a strong front when women are around, but actually suffers from claustrophobia and the fear of the dark, and cries like a baby when exposed to his fears. Mendo, like Shinobu, fills a major role in the cast, and is good for a few laughs here and there for his twisted personality. I'll briefly mention Ryunosuke, a female classmate of Ataru who appears first in chapter 147 of the manga and a bit earlier in both anime adaptations. The reason why I bring her up is while she is a big character in the series, being one of the few eccentric characters of Ataru's class, the main reason she is influential is because of how much of her character would be recycled for Ranma from Ranma 1/2. Whether it be her tomboyish appearance, inspiring Akane, or her proficiency in martial arts, Ryunosuke would play a huge part in laying the groundwork for Ranma 1/2, especially in her relationship with her father and the lack of relationship with her mother. Ryunosuke is a tomboy who actively wants to be more feminine during the story, but her father treats her as a boy and goes even further, wanting Ryunosuke to act like a man and give up on being feminine. This often results in the two fighting, which would be a very commonplace for Ranma and his father. There are other important characters like Lum's little cousin Ten, a perverted and annoying little alien who fills a role of Ataru's pseudo little brother, the rude mooching priest Cherry, his niece the school nurse and priestess Sakura, Lum's many outer worldly friends, and many more other characters. But I think you understand Urusei Yatsura has a large expansive cast of eccentric characters perfectly fitting into the zany world of Urusei Yatsura. A unique aspect of Urusei Yatsura is its use of science fiction and references to Japanese folklore and mythology. These elements, blended with Urusei Yatsura's setting of 1980s Japan, make for an extremely original setup for its over-the-top romance story. It's also important to note and talk about the three different iterations of Urusei Yatsura. The manga, which serialized between 1978 to 1987, including 34 volumes, the original 1981 anime, and the 2022 anime, with the second season releasing this month, January 2024. All three of these iterations of Urusei Yatsura each have their own charm. I personally really enjoyed the manga and have also enjoyed the 2022 remake thus far, but the 1981 anime also has a strong cult following and was a huge part of popularizing the series. I'm going to speak briefly on Urusei Yatsura's ending, so if you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead to the time on screen for the conclusion of the video. Despite the lack of overarching plot points and development during the bulk of Urusei Yatsura, it somehow delivers a compelling and satisfying ending that aims less to provide an absolute finish point, but rather makes the reader remember the important moments in the story leading up to the ending, and realizing that Urusei Yatsura is always going to be about Lum and Ataru's twisted and sweet relationship, and the never-ending shenanigans that come with it. The ending of Urusei Yatsura is the same as the beginning. With the Earth in danger of being destroyed by space mushrooms, Ataru and Lum play a game of tag that will decide the fate of the Earth. Lum has given the ultimatum that if Ataru says he loves her, there will be no need for the game of tag, but if he doesn't, she will wipe herself from the memories of all the people of Earth. Ataru, stubborn as ever, refuses to say he loves Lum, even after he knows of the memory wiping. Arturo refuses to say he loves Lum for the same reason he considers the memory wiping an empty threat. Because to Arturo, he believes he could never forget Lum, and that words mean little, and it means so much more for his actions during the game of tag to say how he truly feels. These feelings reach Lum when she sees Arturo has held onto her horns that she shedded off earlier. The two embrace, and the game of tag to determine the fate of the world is over. After all that, Arturo still doesn't say he loves Lum, and Lum and Arturo run off from an angry mob of bystanders who had been dragged into this mess. Lum professes that she'll get Arturo to say he loves her even if it takes a lifetime, and Arturo responds he'll say it on his deathbed, insinuating that they'll spend the rest of their lives together. To be honest, I think this is a perfect ending for Urusei Yatsura. All the important characters are present, there's plenty of drama, it calls back to the great beginning of the series, and it has a wholesome and happy ending for Lum and Arturo. It doesn't really misstep, and its tone throughout the entire endgame of Urusei Yatsura is a perfect step up from the previous bulk of the story, without losing its way to be too dramatic. Urusei Yatsura's impact and influence is absolute. Whether it be the establishment of iconic characters, character tropes, or the relationships of these characters, Urusei Yatsura has influenced countless anime, and Rumiko Takahashi's over-the-top romance, filled with eccentric personalities, would no doubt inspire and influence the medium of anime greatly. Its depiction of imperfect characters and relationships would prove to be interesting and would become a popular way to write romance in anime and manga. And it has to be said that many romance and harem anime would borrow a lot of elements Rumiko introduced in Urusei Yatsura, and the series would become a foundation of Rumiko Takahashi's legendary manga career. That brings us to the end of the video. Honestly, I'm really excited for the second season of Urusei Yatsura, and I think that it's withstood the test of time and is still a classic worth picking up and seeing. But hey, what do you guys think? Thanks for watching the video.